Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show where we talk about the issues that improve the customer experience at your store. And whether it's the front of the store or the back doesn't really matter, because the better we get at everything that we do, the better the customer experience. And of course, that leads to them coming back for everything they need when they need it, and they'll send all their friends, family, and coworkers to come see you for the same. And this week we're bringing you our Tech Force episode. Once a month we do this. We promote the good things that Tech Force does because we all struggle with technicians, and Tech Force is an incredible organization that helps in so many different ways. And they also help me with quality folks that come on here, like Ryan Weber, CEO of Mentee, who's going to talk to us about something that's very important in automotive service, and that is mentorship programs. Anybody you talk to that's been doing this for any length of time will tell you what a great asset that is to a dealership. But then there are a lot more people that you talk to that they don't really have a program, or they don't know where to get started. So between Tech Force and what Ryan does at Mentee, I hope this is going to be an educational time for you. Take down some notes, because you may want to reach out to this guy afterwards to see, you're going to have one of two things happen out of a conversation. You're either going to get validation that what you're doing is the right thing and you're heading in the right direction, or you just might find that there may be a better opportunity to do something and to improve the efficiency of your store and the quality. Everybody's struggling for technicians. I'm in a dealership every single day of the week, other than the weekends, of course. And it's the same thing everywhere I walk into. Can you get me more techs? Can you get me more techs? Well, the reality is there aren't a ton of techs that are coming out of tech school for you to just cherry pick off of. So if you can't produce technicians, at the very least, you need to become more efficient with what you do have. And one of the best ways to do that is through a mentorship program. So Ryan, welcome to the show, man.
Paul, thank you. And thanks for Tech Force for allowing me to participate tonight and talk about this very important subject.
So tell us a little bit about your background and how did you just come up with this mentor-mentee thing?
Well, I did not come up with it. So the founder of our company is actually the founder of CarStar. So there is a long history with us in regards to providing innovative solutions to big problems in the automotive industry. But I don't actually even come from the automotive industry. So prior to the opportunity to lead this company, I ran an association here in Kansas City where I live called the KC Tech Council. So we were a technology association. And what's very interesting, but maybe not surprising to some people listening tonight, it was the same problems, very similar conversations. And as CEO of that organization for over 10 years, there was never a time where we were not talking about workforce shortages. And the tech industry, it's a little bit more unique, where some of those skills are God-given. I mean, you really have to think differently and have a different brain to have those skills that are really in high demand in the technology industry. And there's very few places to go and learn those skills. So most of the really quality engineers are self-taught because they were drawn into that. But yet, at the employer level, there was great frustration with, why can't we find more? Why can't we just train more? And after hearing 10 years of those conversations, it was time to get in the game and be part of a solution to these problems. They're not going away. And in fact, I would say labor shortages and also retention issues are maybe some of the greatest threats facing the industry at this point. Not the tech industry, well, the tech industry too, I should say, but also automotive. I had the great chance of knowing Lyral Holt, who's the founder of CarStar. He was actually on my board of the Tech Council. So he's been a very successful entrepreneur and has built several different applications for the automotive industry. Many of them have been very successful companies. So this is the latest variety of that. But when he shared his vision for this company, it was kind of like a light bulb went off, because for the first time, I saw something that was a scalable solution to such a big problem. By no means are we the solution to this problem. It is such a complex issue with labor shortages, retention issues, but we certainly are one of them. And so can mentorship programs, if you're using a tool like ours or not, That's one step in the right direction to making sure that you're retaining the thousands of young people that still raise their hand and say they want to do this work professionally. But there's other challenges involved with that. I'm sure we're going to talk about them.
Awesome. We got a few people that tuned in so far. We have Jeff Shearer. Let's see. Oh, no, wait a minute. I'm going the wrong way on the list. The first one in is Larry Feldman, my good buddy from New Jersey. That guy puts the T in training right there. Says, good evening, gentlemen. Robert Allen Carvel, good evening all. We all remember our mentor. Ron Usher, good evening. He's my favorite retired tech. Actually, he's the only retired tech that I know. But he's my favorite nonetheless. Says, good evening, Russell B. Hill. Well, good evening, gentlemen. Great to be here and cannot wait to go and grow. Lamont Harris, good evening, fellas. And Peter Smith, all the way from Canada. Good evening, all. And Jeff Shearer, back to Jeff. Hola, all. And Michael Larkin, local guy from Hartford. We have an all-star cast in-house tonight. I like that. I like that. So, you know, I've been in automotive for a long time, and the word mentors has come and go over many decades. And I've seen kind of some stores have tried it. Other stores have been, some stores have been successful. Others have been unsuccessful. It seems ad hoc or haphazard. Most of this stuff doesn't seem to be well put together. So I'm one that always is a big believer in leveraging technology. So anything where there's a system of learning and a system of accountability, man, I'm all in. So when I saw some of the stuff that you do, I thought that would be something great to share with the audience, because I'm sure there are folks out there, any of you out there in automotive land that have some experience with mentorship programs, and or have you had struggles with trying to set that up in your stores. I'd love to hear. So where do we begin in something like this?
You know, you kind of already teed that up. So for those of you that are not familiar with Mentor, Mentee, or our company, it's because we're pretty new. This product has been tested the marketplace for a little over a year, but we formed and launched the company just in March of this year. So when I say we're a new business, we are very new. New as in launching in this year. But yet, this is such a big problem. And in such a short amount of time, because of the relationships of folks on our team and the growth of our company, we're already operating in 21 states, including 2 Canadian provinces, at over 50 locations of hundreds of users on our platform. And in many ways, this is a problem that technology can solve, because traditional mentorship programs typically fail. They fail because there's not a real defined plan. There's no accountability. There's no tool to track the effectiveness of those programs. And yet, I'm a product of one of those programs. I mean, I'm sitting here because I've had great mentors in my life that have really challenged me and prepared me for the leadership positions that I've been lucky enough to have. And I bet most of us can say that. We really don't get to a point where we are leading or successful without the help of others. Whether that's in a formal mentorship program that is fully defined and there's accountability, there's tools for tracking all that, or the opposite, where someone that you look up to as a mentor may not view themselves in that same category, yet they're there to really, in most cases, be the first person who saw something more in you than you saw in yourself. Without those people in our lives, it can be harder to grow our professional careers, or even our personal lives too. So, but mentorship and even apprenticeship, and by the way, I will use those terms very similarly because I feel very, very similar about them. They've been around since the beginning of time to replace and prepare future workforces. So this is not new, but yet in the world we live in today, we can use technology tools to help track the effectiveness of those programs, and most importantly, hold all the different groups involved accountable to the experience, because we know they're incredibly valuable.
You know, it's interesting what you just said there. Sometimes people don't know their mentors, right? And
That's right.
I have to tell you, I was in Danbury about a year or so ago, and I was working in a store, and I went to visit somebody that worked for an aftermarket repair chain. And I knew the last time, you know, it's been decades, And I just took a shot that the guy was still working there. And I hadn't seen him literally in decades. And back then, I didn't think of it as training, although it was training, because when I walked in, at first the guy didn't quite recognize me because I used to have a lot of hair. Now, I don't have any hair. And this little bit of gray hair. So I look maybe a little bit different than I looked 30 some odd years ago. But this guy was still working there. And the first thing that he said to me was, I'll never forget coming to the Fairfield store for training, under you. And at that point, it hit me like, wow, way back when, I didn't even think that was training. I just thought it was what you did,
It can feel that way sometimes, right? I mean, that sometimes those training, especially if it's required training, can feel like a burden. And that's often the mindset that we have when we go into those experiences, is that I'm required to do this. Why do I have to do this? I already know how to do this. And so your mental attitude going in is probably not where it should be in most of those cases. But at the end of the day, that's in the experience business, right? Training and mentorship or apprenticeship programs, those are experience programs. It's in the same vein as what Walt Disney World provides to their patrons when they come in the doors, an experience. So if that experience is not valuable or perceived not to be valuable, then it can have a whole different outcome after it's over. And also preparing the other folks who are going to go through that experience too. If people don't speak positively about that, then that's going to be the way that others enter into those experiences too.
Now, I want to make sure that we kind of set the stage here so that people have a full understanding. I think the stat you shared with me earlier was it 42% of the new technicians that come into our automotive world leave and never come back within 2 years. Was that the stat, 42%?
Yeah, what I love about statistics is you find the ones that help build the narrative, the story that you're trying to tell. But every single one of the statistics I'll share tonight are true, and they should really scare business owners in this industry because they're real and they're not going to change unless a lot of us change and be part of solutions to this big, massive problem with the future of technicians in the automotive industry. And the ASC Educational Foundation, in their annual report last year, showed that 42% of new technicians leave the industry within 2 years, never to return again. So, hey, let's be honest here. The door's always open. If you hire somebody to work for you, they're not guaranteeing you anything, and you're not guaranteeing them anything too. But you're all kind of giving that a chance to succeed. But it's clear that if that statistic is true, right, I think we all would probably agree that it is. There's a lot of different reasons why we're in that situation. But essentially what that stat tells me is it's not a labor shortage, it's a labor crisis. Because even though there are still thousands, tens of thousands of young people who have raised their hand and said, I'm going to go through a training or educational program. Yeah, and I'm going to do this job professionally, only to quit. So you can assume there's several reasons why that's the case, but in many, many cases, is they didn't know what they were learning and how that was going to apply to a career. They probably didn't feel very supported by that employer. And so the door was swung wide open. It was too easy for them to get a job that paid probably a few more dollars an hour or not, and leave and go take that opportunity because they didn't feel valued or that the experience they were having at that location was valuable. So it's very complex when we look at this. We can't just say, well, 42% of them must have had a bad boss. That's not necessarily the case. It's way more complex than that.
So the way to align this properly for success for anybody that's out there that's thinking about starting this goes hand in hand with a practice known as onboarding, right?
That's right.
It's not just a question of it's like buying a teenager a hot car and just handing it to them without teaching them the dangers of that car. So if we want, I think we all agree that mentorship is an amazing part of building a successful repair shop. I don't think there's anybody on here or anywhere else that will disagree with that. But as with anything that we do, it needs to be properly set up, because unless we have an onboarding process where we know what our vision is for the store and for that person and how we're going to positively impact their lives in order to have them excel in this career, hence the term career path, not just a job. If you just give them a job, people bounce from job to job. It's always been that way. But if you lay out a career path with the right onboarding, and now the mentorship program would be that accountability piece, no?
And it's a recruiting tool as well. So if I was to enter into a career and technical school right now and be graduating this fall, I would have a number of opportunities because there's such a giant demand and a low supply. And the Tech Force Foundation does so much to measure this. And I really thank them a lot because when I was getting acquainted with this new opportunity. By the way, I said, I don't come from the automotive industry, but I grew up in it. My father worked for Western Auto since he was a teenager, almost for 30 years. And the headquarters is in Kansas City, which is why I live here. So I've got a lot to thank for the automotive industry, but the terminology is kind of funny. It's coming back to me from remembering a lot of what my father used to talk about with his role in the industry. But things have changed. The way, especially if we hear the term onboarding, to me, it's kind of an eye-rolling corporate cringy term because effective onboarding is not easy. And consistently onboarding new hires effectively is also not easy unless you're using a tool to track that. At the highest level, when we describe what we do, and I try to tell my friends what it is that we do if they're not in the industry, we describe it as if we are the engine that is transferring wisdom from one generation of technicians to the next. And that's very important because there is an all-time low, and Tech Force measures this very well, of completion rates from those career technical schools. So the pipeline of future workforce is not at one of those programs. So we have to look way more holistically at and really take a portfolio approach to where we find those potential future workers. Because they're not at a career technical school. They're not at a junior college. Those completion rates are at an all-time low, and there's not a lot of science to make us think that that's going to be changing anytime soon. So
do we have an age range for that? Do we know that or no?
I'm sure there is, and I don't want to misquote that, but that's I believe from more traditional age students. So it's mostly common for a high school degree, but a degree is not necessarily required to be successful, and certainly not a college degree. There's a lot more positions today that we're trying to find out, and I think becoming more clear that we never really needed a college degree for some of those jobs. And we don't need to get into that today, of course. But when we talk about onboarding, we can't look at it from the experience of what we have. Things have changed and the world has changed. And in many ways, it's because of technology. And so we really need to think about what tools are out there to make that experience more effective. But also, it can't just be a consistent experience that everyone gets. So onboarding needs to mean something specific to the individual candidate. And really, it's beginning with the end in mind. Yep. And recently, we were meeting with a location, and the service manager was very upset because they had a new hire, came into his office and said, I want to make $100,000 this year. And he laughed him out of the office. And I immediately kind of interrupted his conversation and really kind of bragging about this story he was telling us to say, that's a great thing for you because you know exactly what steps that person would need to take to make $100,000 in that job. You would make about $600,000 for your business if that was the case. So instead of saying, young people are entitled or spoiled, maybe that person was hungry and wanted to be rewarded for the hard work they were going to be putting into that company. Right. So beginning with the end in mind is very important. And defining success and how you're measuring that success is how you can define what outcome you want for every individual hire.
That's a firm belief of mine. You always start with the end in mind, regardless of what you're doing, because that helps you with the action steps to actually get there.
That's right. And it's not a 1 week sit in a room and learn everything about our business. Those onboard experiences typically need to last way longer into that. But if that young person doesn't know where they're going and why they're learning the things they're learning and how it's going to impact their career, just makes it too easy for them to wake up one day and say, what am I doing here? And
Right.
unfortunately, we hear that a lot too, where some of the two most common and negative things that a new technician hears, which is one thing that apparently has been consistent for a long time, is the first day on the job, since they don't really know what they're doing yet. I mean, they've gone through an educational experience, but the engines are not the same. They're very high-tech vehicles today. And even though they know how an engine works and those parts work, they haven't worked on that specific engine. So in many cases, an older technician will tell them, get a broom and start cleaning then. And that's not going to motivate them to want to get out of bed and do that every day.
Right.
Or a disgruntled or disenfranchised person, and these are very common stories that we hear, says, to the young person, what are you doing here? You're wasting your time. So there's a lot of challenges, and it's time to address these head on, or we're going to be deeper into this crisis.
Now, Peter says here, NADA suggests tech onboarding should be a 12-month process. Probably to most people, that seems like a lifetime. But I think that's part of the investment that you make in your store, right? I mean, I'm saying in your store because sure, you're investing in the technician, but the end goal is that technician then becomes part of your machine, and they generate a lot of revenue. When a technician turns over, just an average technician, and I'm not talking about a master tech, it's $170,000 what that costs the dealership. And you think you could just plug somebody else and plug and play. No, you can't. It takes 3 years to get caught up with what you lost from that one technician. So that 12-month process, I'm all for it, but I wonder how many people actually know that.
Well, if you look at how some associations are measuring the task list that a new technician needs to be competent in all the different skill categories. And that's what our platform provides, is custom task lists, so that it takes the guessing work out of what they're going to need to learn today, tomorrow, next week, next month, and throughout the entire year. And that's a reason why our business model is an annual subscription paid up front. And there's very specific reasons why we do that, because we want each location to be personally and financially invested in that new person's success, which takes realistically, and thanks for mentioning this, 12 months. So if you're going to be just doing this on a month-by-month basis, you're already setting yourself up for failure.
Right.
If you look at this as a 12-month cycle, and I think for ASC's task list, there's over 350 tasks that are needing a repetition of 3 or more to be competent in that task and skill. So that should take about 12 months. And then there's all the certifications along the way and all the credentials that they need to get to become, hopefully someday, a master technician and providing a great living for themselves and producing for the business. 12 months it's realistic.
That's a lot of demand on a new technician. So how much time through the mentorship program, how much time do they need to invest in something like that? Or is that per store?
Yeah, so for our system, there's 3 key user roles. There's a manager, which doesn't need to necessarily be the service manager. It's the manager of the mentorship program. And that's very important. If the service manager doesn't have the bandwidth to hold the mentor and the mentee accountable to the program, find somebody who can. Some of our customers, I mean, it's someone who works in HR, someone who works in accounting. Sometimes it's the dealer principal themselves. So that manager is not the service manager. It's the manager of the mentorship program. Very, very different distinction right there. So in our system, the mentee has a custom task list built for them. So they know, with the help and guidance of their mentor, what they're going to be working on that day. So let's say they enter in the shop. They basically go through a task and they pull up our app and they track that repetition in the app, which is on the web as well as on mobile and Android and Apple. You kind of have to do that these days.
Yeah.
So after they've tracked that repetition and uploaded that into our app, the mentor gets notified. So on their own time, they can review that work. They can provide a rating. They can provide some feedback, and it's all tracked right there in the app. And that's incredibly important that I say that on their own time, because the last thing you want is to somebody yell at you while you're underneath the vehicle to come check their work. It's not safe. It's distracting, and it burns out the mentors just as quick as it does the mentees. So they get to do it on their own time. But I would say for the mentees, they're spending probably an hour or so a week uploading those tasks, maybe more, depending on how quickly they're working through them. But for the mentor, it's 10 to 15 minutes. But
give me an example of some of the tasks.
Well, it's everything. In most locations, you start by changing oil.
Okay.
So whatever brand you underneath and how they describe that, but essentially they want you to be able to change oil consistently, effectively, and never forget to put the plug back in. So that's the key to doing things on a repetitive basis at a high level of quality with low negative outcomes, like forgetting to put the drain plug in or changing the filter, anything like that. Those are just key examples. But that's where a lot of new technicians we find are starting by working on the lube rack or changing oil. And then from there, they move into working next to somebody in a bay. And we recommend that person not necessarily be a master tech, because they are typically producing at the highest level for the business. Yeah. And you really don't want to be pulling them off of that to train. Because the other challenge that we commonly run into is that mentors aren't overly excited to be mentors and provide training, especially if they're on flat rate, because they'll be losing money. So a manager really needs to think about that financial incentive for the mentors to participate, because if they're going to be losing money, that's going to decrease their motivation to take that seriously. But we got to remember, we're asking them to pay it forward. Very few people get to the level of being competent or a master tech on their own. Somebody helps them get there. So all we're asking is to pay it forward in a much more structured, technology-enabled way.
So let me ask you this then. The mentor, is it a combination of talking to them about the repairs that they're doing, or is it merely a clerical function? Because if it's the first, you'd have to have some proficiency yourself. So yeah, you may not want to tie up a master tech to do it, but I don't think just anybody can plug into that role, no?
Well, you don't necessarily have to just have one mentor. And so we look at when a company purchases a license from us, it includes managers and mentors, because you may have multiple along the way, depending on how the shop is structured or how the company wants the experience to be conducted. So you may work beside a master tech as you're getting into more complex work that requires looking at someone who actually can articulate the intricacies of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Also, you throw in electric vehicles into the mix, which is something even more complicated. Even though there's fewer moving parts, service on electrical vehicle is much different. And electricity scares me too. I mean, it's terrifying to know that battery can kill you. So it's a whole different attitude when we're talking about that. But also, these are high-tech cars today. And the way that the economy and everything is moving, people are likely going to be owning those vehicles longer, which is going to put in a more complex and more strenuous load on the service side of the business.
Kenneth Dunner, all the way from Sugar Land, Texas. Good evening, gentlemen, from Sugar Land, Texas, just southwest of Houston. And my friend Michael Dean Offmuth. Good evening, guys. So a new tech has got a lot of things going on. They have ASC training that they're doing. Yep. They have training that they're doing in the store. And now we're looking at a mentorship program, which is a very good idea. But do all of these programs kind of run in tandem, or do we set that up with the store based on their particular needs?
It would need to be at the store level. So even if you're underneath an OEM brand, every location has different needs and demands and has access to different workforce and levels of education, all those things. So the custom task list is very important. But before that happens, we prefer and somewhat require that a couple of steps take place first.
Okay.
And so in our platform, we offer assessments, and we first want the location to do a cultural assessment. So just get a benchmark of basically what we ask in a number of questions in 15 different categories, and assess essentially what we're asking them is, do they believe the company believes in them? And if the answer to that question is no, yeah, and if the answer to that question is no, or if it's not incredibly strong, there's a lot of other challenges at that location that need to be addressed for successful onboarding, mentorship, training, and retention. And so these assessments can help identify some of those areas that also need to be addressed as we're bringing new people into the business. The next thing we assess is the managers, the mentors, and the mentees. Essentially for the managers, we're assessing their ability to conduct a program, but for the mentors, we're also making sure that they are willing and able to train and educate. And even if they score an average score on that, we provide educational courses, not on how to become a technician, but how to be a good mentor, a great manager, and also for the mentees, understand what they're getting into and what the career is going to be like, even if someone they work with is not articulating those same things. So it's assessments for the culture of the location, the ability of the mentor to train, and then for the mentee, their ability to learn. So that everyone.
Does the question ever come back? The answer ever come back is no?
There are examples of that, but that's not necessarily that they need to be out of the program. That's why the educational courses can help fill in those gaps. But if they were never assessed to begin with, you may not know that somebody struggles with communication, because there's a good example of this with one of our customers. I wish I could say who, they may be listening, but they, when we were onboarding them onto the platform, they're like, oh, we already know who our mentor is going to be. This person has been mentoring people for 30 years. No one's better than this person. And I immediately had to stop them and say, I already know you're wrong, because you're not assessing their ability or their willingness to train.
Exactly.
So you perceive, but you've never measured their ability to be a good mentor. And that person did not score very high on the assessment. And it validated the fact that they need to think more broadly about that, because they thought the box was checked. We've got somebody who people say is a great mentor, but they never measured that effectiveness. So I can't understand how important that is to provide some sort of a baseline. So you're benchmarking culture and the people that are going to be leading these programs. Because if you get it wrong, the problem's not getting solved.
That is a huge takeaway right there. And a book that I've quoted at times, it's called The 5 Love Languages.
Yeah.
And that book
I'm
is
an acts of service guy.
What's that?
I'm an acts of service guy.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
But what's so funny about it is I'm glad that you guys do this evaluation, because so often we think this is the gal, this is the guy, and the data would indicate otherwise. All these people, all of us who struggle in relationships because we're having communication issues, and we can't understand why the other person doesn't see things the way we see it. Well, we've never learned, and we've never taken any kind of an assessment, like in the book, where you read the book, it talks about the different communication styles, and then you take a test to determine which one you are, because before you start reading the book, you think you're a certain way, and then you find out that you're not.
Yeah.
So this testing that you guys do, I think that's brilliant, because that's just one of the many things that sets a dealership up for success.
And that's a good analogy. I really appreciate you mentioning that book, because that assessment didn't take very long to complete, and they were able to, within their own narrative, assess what of those 5 languages you're likely to be most drawn to, both giving and receiving.
Right.
Same thing. Our assessments take 10 to 15 minutes to complete, and it's a worthwhile venture. And we really want that cultural assessment to take place before we even onboard them into the platform, because that allows us to tell them these are areas of weakness and these are areas of strength. You've got to address those areas of weakness, because that is the core of why you're having a hard time retaining new technicians.
Right.
And even though you may like working there, if other people don't, it's often the people at the top that find out last. And speaking of books we're reading, there's a book I read recently from Adam Grant, who talks about peer bonuses. So if you really want to know who your highest performers are, managers almost always get it wrong. But if you were to do $100 or $500 bonus at a certain level at the company and said, you guys decide who should get this bonus, they know who's actually working the hardest. Because in this world, there's givers and takers. But the takers do a darn good job of telling the leaders at the company just how much they're giving when they're not. But everyone that works at their level knows they're a taker, but their boss thinks, boy, that person's giving 100% every day of this week. No, they're not.
Oh my God. I've seen that over decades.
Yeah, we all have our stories and probably could name those people, but they exist. And you want to reduce how many people like that are in a company. And that's one way to do it.
Now, the layout is a year. You evaluate the mentors, the mentees, you evaluate everyone to see where they may be deficient in some areas or where they may need some additional coaching in order to make the overall program successful. You then look at what else they're doing, i.e., what's their caseload, so to speak, of ASE training that they're going to be doing over the next 12 months. And then what is the next 12 months worth of OEM training that they're going to do. And then I would imagine you kind of match those so that we're kind of all working in the same direction like this, yes?
Yeah, and it's very important, especially with the task list, that you customize those lists. I can guarantee you right now, it's whatever list you have is way too long. And so we prefer to categorize that so you can prioritize what category that new hire and mentee is going to be focusing on. Because if they were to look through all 350 plus tasks, they would say, I'm never going to get through this, especially when I need to repeat these tasks 3 or more times to actually be competent in that skill. And with our technology system, a service manager could actually log in. Let's say an A tech goes on vacation and they're in charge of engine service side or transmissions, for example. And if you had to have a newer technician fill in for some of that work, because again, the demand is so high and right now everyone's understaffed and just needs more and more and more. So you're likely going to be taking those risks in the near future of who can fill in when someone's on vacation. And that guessing game is incredibly dangerous. What our system allows you to know is how, from a percentage level, how competent they are in those different categories. So you could more, from a data standpoint, make an educated decision on who can fill in when certain folks are on vacation or as those repair orders come in. So if you're just guessing, you're also setting up that person to fail. And we're already in a tough situation now where the new hires are sometimes 2 generations removed from their peers. It's a very intimidating environment to be in, especially when you don't know what you're doing and everyone else does. But they're expecting you to. You graduated from a program, you were hired, and you're being given an opportunity. Now it's time to prove yourself. So it's very overwhelming and intimidating. And I don't say this because I don't want anyone to think that young people are weak-minded. They're not. They just have options. And if they're set up to fail,
they're not going to put up with the shit that we put up with for so many years.
They don't have to.
Difference.
They can go work somewhere immediately and make more money. That's short term, of course, not long term. Right. But I guarantee whatever city they're in, there's another company willing to take them on the next day at a higher pay. It's just not going to probably scale much more. And the common example I hear from a lot of our customers is that Amazon or others are paying $5 more an hour, so we're losing our techs to Amazon. It's like, no, you're not losing your techs to $5 an hour. You're losing your techs because they don't know where they're going.
Well, let me ask you this then. We have all different levels. So to your point, if this engine guy is going to be on vacation, who else fills in? So there are many different specialties within a repair shop. So how many different mentors would a shop need? So let's say we have a small shop. We've got 20 technicians. Or I guess maybe that's a medium shop, depending on where in the country you are.
It's on the market. Yeah, maybe not in Dallas, but maybe in rural areas, yeah.
So if you have 20 techs, then how many mentors is there a specific ratio or a suggested ratio? How does that work?
It's all about the person. So some folks can manage multiple mentees underneath them and some can't or don't want to. And that's again why those assessments are incredibly important. So there are absolutely people out there who can be a mentor to multiple mentees, but not everybody. So it's a person by person, location by location process that can't be standardized because not everybody is good at this. But you've got to get it right. And this is so important. Because talk about statistics, almost 90% of mentees go on to be mentors. So if you take it seriously, structure the program, use a tool to measure the effectiveness, have incredibly high and positive outcomes, they're going to be mentors for your next class, your next hires. And now you've got an ecosystem or a cycle that's just repeating itself and growing, and people care and support each other in a whole different way. And that's what you would want to see in a shop. But
it's
if
a whole pay it forward mentality.
That's right, paying it forward. But if you got a mentor that acts like they're too busy, or they don't care, or they are disenfranchised, they don't believe the company believes in them, and they share that feeling with the newest hire, that newest hire is going to share that feeling with someone else too. That cycle also repeats itself.
Well, so what's really good about this, okay, if you're running a store and you're thinking long-term, big picture, this is huge. This is such a foreign concept for so many stores, okay? And it just hit me now when you said what you did, because if I've always been a firm believer in proper onboarding and career path and all that, but this takes it to yet another level, because if you can show these kids that you're making an investment in them, I think anybody that gets that kind of treatment is, would you say 90% become mentors?
90% of mentees go on to become, of those who are mentored, go on to be mentors themselves. That's right.
Wow.
And that's from the Society of HR Executives and Managers. So SHRM, they produced that study. And companies have been focusing on mentorship for a long time, but traditional mentoring is often the problem we're solving too, because it's typically matchmaking. They're not assessed on their willingness or ability to be a good mentor. You meet a couple of times, you talk about things, and things are always good. And if the boss comes in and says, how is the program going? It's good, boss. That tells you nothing. Right. And that experience probably is providing nothing. Right. It's something, but it's probably not effective long-term either, right?
So that's really part of your recruiting strategy also, when you think about it.
It should be a superpower, because again, if I've got multiple job offers, let's again go into the hypothetical situation where I'm getting ready to graduate this fall from a career and technical education program. I'm marketable. I'm in demand. So I've got options. But if an employer was to come to me and really lay out, here's what day 1 through day 365 is going to look like. Here's what your pay is going to be. Here's how your pay is going to scale and grow as you become competent in those skills. I'd kind of be thrown back and be like, well, you're very different than everyone else that's just willing to give me a signing bonus and a couple more dollars an hour. But it's not about money. This is not a problem that money can solve. It will take investment from employers to be setting themselves up for success. And one of the soapboxes I've been on recently, we get the chance to speak about this, because again, TechForce is measuring this. The foundation in their annual report shows that the completion rates from post-secondary institutions is at an all-time low. So that's no longer a pipeline. That well that we've all been drinking from is dry.
Right.
So we've got to think differently. So now we're going to be pulling in candidates who may have never worked on a vehicle before. And we're going to have to, because there's those few candidates out there who are going to be actually completing those CTE programs.
I don't know if you saw this stat or not, but last year there were 321,500 students that engaged with TechForce career exploration content through a variety of the different channels. I mean, that's huge.
That is huge.
These are conversations we need to have early when they're very young. I want to play a clip. I played this before, but I think it's one of my favorite videos, and I think it's worthy of watching again.
You know me. I'm just a younger version of you.
I like to tear stuff apart so I can put it back together.
My hands are my best tools.
I learn with my hands. I work with them.
I think with them.
We know how to make things go.
So what would you tell me if I was the younger you?
Would you tell me to stop fidgeting?
Sit at my desk and try to be like everybody else?
Or that there's only one road to success? Or should I keep driving like you did, fixing stuff and figuring out how to keep the world moving?
Help me show the world that there's a profession right here in my hands.
Help me build my life and my career the way I'm wired to work.
For us, this is how we work, and you can lay that across to you. It's how we are, wired for success. If we stand together, stand for those of us who love working with our hands, we'll not only champion tomorrow's workforce of technicians, but we just may change the way everyone thinks about technical careers.
You figure it out how to be you.
Now help me be me.
I mean, that's a conversation we just can't have early enough. And that was Cody, by the way. Cody's been on the show as well. Another great TechForce person. But yeah, no, that's you set so many things up in a positive motion when you set up a mentoring program. And there's so many benefits from the recruiting, from the retention piece. You know, we have in dealerships, why buy here? And this is a very strong why work here, right? Because there's no there's no customer retention until we have employee retention. So all these things kind of go hand in hand. So what other types of things do we need to know?
There's so much. And that video really sparked a lot of thoughts and validation of why we're doing this, because I mentioned this book earlier that I was reading from Adam Grant. And in that book, it talks about change. And in many ways, that's what we're describing and really asking of employers is that we've got to change. We've got to invest in new things and new tools to get the outcomes and success that we want. But I firmly believe in the very near future, the haves and have-nots of employers will be based on their investment in mentorship and training programs like what we've described. But that has to happen in-house.
Yeah.
Because with the completion rates of post-secondary institutions at that all-time low, that's not where they're going to be getting the training. And really, it's not realistic because of how advanced these vehicles have become. Automakers are not providing those vehicles to training programs. So that training is going to occur in real time for everybody. As the advancement of technology continues to be in these vehicles at a much more accelerated rate than probably what we can all handle at this point, that makes it even more important to focus on this. And I see automakers or employers refuse to do that. I wonder what the future will hold for them, because customers will feel the pain first. The vehicle is going to sit at that shop for an extended period of time, way beyond we ever even thought was possible, for what may seem like minor repairs, because there is not a human to do that work. And I think we need to look at other industries that have really been focusing on this too. So we also operate in collision and heavy duty diesel trucking. And in the trucking industry, they've got a much higher sense of urgency. Same problem of labor shortages and all that, but
All the same.
the truck's got to get back on the road for the company to make money. So they have invested at a much higher rate than what we've seen in collision and automotive in order to train and support the future of their technician workforce as well. So not only is there competition with other dealers, there's other industries that are competing for these same workers.
Now, I just want to acknowledge Tim's comment there was beautiful. He said, this industry now more than ever needs that youth. Great video. I sure hope we can preach this info to more young individuals. It seems as if it's harder than ever to get young individuals and retain them. Now, if you're running a dealership right now, okay, this information is key, because I don't know, I don't know if there's any kind of verifiable stats anywhere that talk to how many dealerships actually offer a bona fide mentorship program. And now is the time to take your A tech, your B tech, a C tech, somebody on the loop, on the fast lane, and go and put together your own recruiting package, if you will, and you go into the schools that may or may not have an automotive program. What we know is these kids are passionate about using their hands, using their minds, and that's what you need today to be able to work on some of the stuff. We've gone from mechanics to electromechanical engineers today, like that, and it's going even faster. If you were to put together such a team with a laid out career path, a bona fide mentoring program, what you intend to do for those students that you welcome into some kind of a apprenticeship program, or put together a program in a school. We talk a lot about, local dealerships, we give to our communities. Yeah, we do and we don't. We give a jersey that has our name on it, with the hopes that mom and dad see that jersey and think, you know what, we need a new car. We want to go buy from that guy because he gave us shirts. No, I'm talking about really, really giving to your community and helping yourself at the same time. Because I guarantee you, I've not heard of anybody doing this. I guarantee you that if you put together an effort like this and you go into schools, you're going to have a list of kids that want to get involved with your dealership, that want to get into automotive. I mean, this is key stuff here. Wow.
Yeah, and Paul, in our experience, we see that a lot of locations, dealerships have had a mentorship program or have one that on paper it is. But if you can't show that to a candidate, it's like describing an event or a party that they weren't at.
Right.
So it's very difficult without a tool like ours or others where you can actually show them, here's the application you'll be using to advance your career. It doesn't mean anything to them.
Accountability.
That's right. That's the key
Only
word.
the numbers, right?
That's right.
That's what most of these are lacking, accountability. We see so many people jump in and out of things. There's no consistency, and then they're gone. Right? How many times does that happen? It happens so much that people, when new management comes in, oftentimes they say, just let them spot on because they're going to be gone in 90 days anyway.
Yeah, we've heard that a lot. Why should I invest or pay for your tool when these young people just don't want to work and they're not going to stick around? Well, whenever we hear those statements, it's a red flag to us that maybe that's a location that we can't work with, that doesn't want to change.
100%.
Because those are what we've classified as kind of toxic culture statements. Those are two perfect examples of the ones we hear the most. Young people just don't want to work. And listen, every generation has been told that by the generations above them, that generation below us just doesn't want to work.
Right.
That is a lazy and misinformed comment, because in reality, probably just don't want to work for you. And that's hard.
Video about that.
But Paul, that's very hard to accept, because at those locations who commonly you hear those toxic culture statements, they don't believe they have a problem. But it's easy to measure how deep this problem goes by how often you hear statements like that. And the other one is, well, why invest any money or time in them? They're not going to stick around. No, they're not. With that kind of an attitude towards your future workforce. If you go to work tomorrow and you hear those things being said, immediately ask yourself why they're saying those things. Because this problem has a solution. There may be a lot more problems that need to be addressed before you start seeing results from your retention and ability to recruit. But this is a solvable problem. Just may take a little bit of introspection to get to a solution.
I like the fact that you need to make a commitment up front. I liken it to, there's two different used car managers and on the planet. There's the used car manager that takes in a car, doesn't run it through recon because they don't know whether or not they want to spend the money on it. So they put it out on the front line with bald tires, a dented fender, a star in the windshield, waiting for a customer to want to commit to that car before they invest the money into recon. And then you've got the other manager that looks at the car, knows the market day supply, knows how quickly those cars turn, knows even if they don't have personal experience with that car in their DMS, they know the rest of the market's doing well with it. And they then make that investment proactively. That car comes in, and within 48 hours later, that car has been reconditioned. It's been through detail. It's on the front line, and typically it gets premium dollars a short time later. Whereas the first used car manager example that I gave you, that's the one where 90 days later, that car is still sitting on the lot, and now they're rolling the dice as to whether or not they take a hit at the auction on it, or if they do some of the work and then try to get out from under it. So it's mentalities.
And let's throw another wrinkle into that story. That only happens if they have a qualified, trained workforce to do the reconditioning on that vehicle.
Bingo.
This is not something that's going to be automated by robots anytime soon. We will need humans to do this work for a very long time.
Yeah.
Well, as long as we can hold out before the robots take over, right? So this problem is not going to go away. But again, I want to reiterate, it's a solvable problem, even if there's a lot of other issues that have to get solved first.
Yeah. Robert Allen Carvel says it is necessary, a must. The dealer has a mentor program for the future success of their business. It couldn't really be easier. Seriously. It's like when I walk into a store, okay, and I ask the questions that I ask, and I make the observances that I do, all of these basic problems that most dealerships suffer from, they're easily solved. You just need somebody else to look at it with another set of eyes, find where the bottlenecks are, and then share something that they've done or they've seen others do to resolve that problem. With this technician mentorship program, man, if you're not doing it in your store, and if you're not connected with Ryan, or if you're not a member of TechForce, you need to be. And like I said, two things come out of any conversation. It's either going to be validation that you're on the right track, you're doing everything perfectly, or you know what? Maybe not so much. Maybe it wouldn't hurt you to find out how you can improve and then kind of reinvest. Sometimes, I think Joe Chambers put out a post the other day. He's in Service Drive Live, about back to basics. And, I have so much work. I worked all day today, so I did not get a chance to attend the meeting again this week. But we keep going back to basics when we should stay at basics, right? Formulate a plan. We know things aren't going to change. So now let's formulate a plan to make better use of what we have. So Ryan, I can't thank you enough for being on the show and sharing with us. If anybody's not connected with Ryan or myself, please, by all means, reach out to us. Me personally, I like to connect with like-minded automotive or restaurant professionals that if I can help you, it makes sense for us to connect. If you can help me, it makes sense for us to connect. But if we're totally in completely different industries, for me anyway, then it doesn't make sense to connect. I got a couple of comments here. Peter Smith says, have two onboarding programs, fixed and variable. They are truly a must for anyone wanting to retrain staff. That's brilliant. Do you do both, fixed and variable?
No, I mean, it's a little bit different in that regard. Maybe I have a different definition of what fixed and variable would be.
Auto repairs as opposed to sales.
So it's funny because we have a location right now that actually has asked us, can you help us build a task list for service advisors?
Yeah.
And then also for our sales leaders. And the answer is we're getting to a point where we could start building a lot of those programs, but That's not our focus right now. We are so highly focused on those skilled technicians because that is where the greatest demand for those skills are going to be.
Yeah.
And that's why we're heavily focused on that for now. But in the future, we'll see.
No, I totally can appreciate that. Jenny Beth says, where do I sign up?
You can go to mentormentee.com. And not only you'll find our contact information, but you can also book a short demo of our software and see if it's a fit for you.
Awesome. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and those that are going to watch it on the replay. Wish you a safe and successful next week. And Ryan, stay on while we log off here for a second. I'm going to leave you with the latest TechForce video. techforce.org. Sign up for your free account and explore all the things it has to offer.
TechForce, the first and only network for next-gen tech.
Welcome to TechForce, a platform dedicated to launching and advancing the careers of next-generation technicians. People like you, students, instructors, working techs, industry leaders, you. Showcase your school, job, and awards. Post your current project and follow your friends. Flex your talent. Follow industry trends and connect with future employers. Connect works on all devices. Compete with other users and climb the leaderboard in daily and special trivia. Scholarships.
$2.3 million in scholarships awarded annually.
Explore your passion, flex your talent, build your career. Join techforce.org.
Wow. Oh, and Tim's got a great comment here before we go off. Says the only problem is getting the directors, dealer principals, etc. to buy into their back shop. I feel it's always so much sales, speaking from a shop foreman standpoint at the dealer level. We are just not enticing the youth to come through the door. I myself have been a go-getter and risen through the ranks. However, it's not always as cut and dry when onboarding someone green, it seems. Most individuals want the plan to succeed, not just a job, just my opinion. And it is a fabulous opinion. Thank you so much. You've contributed some great stuff here tonight. It says, great show. Thanks, guys. Have a great week. And Robert Allen Carvel, thanks to all who commented. Have a great week. All right, with that, I wish you a safe and successful next week. And we'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live. Ryan, don't go away.